And welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, and I do have a co-host today. Nick Horwat is back from his trip. I see you have a new hat on, Horwat. You want to explain to the podcast-only listeners what you got on top of your head?
It's just a Bucky's hat. Drove through Tennessee, went to I forget what town it's in now, but went to the only Bucky's in Tennessee until the new one opens. We did drive past one that's in the middle of being built. And that's a life-changing experience. If you haven't been into the South, you got to do that. It's picture a Walmart with a ton of gas pumps. And by a ton, I mean a literal ton. But it is obviously so much more than that. I'm sure everyone has seen the memes and the videos at this point. And it was worth it. It was quite fun. The entire trip was really fun. And I'm alive and well after Nashville. And I'm ready to get back to work. It's been a while.
And we know, obviously, it's nice to have a couple days off, but we do know that when we're in the zone, especially on recording days, that's all we think about until we get this recording over with. In fact, I want to tell a little story before we get into Help or Hurt, which is a fun segment we're going to do to talk a little bit about some free agent forwards that the Pittsburgh Penguins could target. We're also going to do a Name That Stat line later in the show to help us break down some of the goaltenders that are going to be available for the Pittsburgh Penguins this summer as well. But like I said, before we get into that, I woke up this morning around 4 o'clock to use the restroom because I have the bladder of an 80-year-old man. But when I was in there and then coming back and trying to fall back asleep, I was thinking, oh, it's a recording day. We're going to talk about some speedy free agent forwards. And I was like, you know what? It's been a while since the Penguins signed Brandon Tanev. Maybe he's a free agent. I haven't checked in on that. I look and I see, oh, he has 2 years at $3.5 million left on his contract. He must have signed an extension in Seattle. Lo and behold, I completely forgot that was a 6-year deal that Jim Rutherford signed to Brandon Tanev back in 2019. I completely had forgotten that at the time, Jim Rutherford signed a fourth line forward to a 6-year contract for $3.5 million per season. And I looked at that and I said, yeah, I need to go back to bed because either I'm hallucinating or I completely had forgotten how crazy Jim Rutherford had gotten by the end of his tenure signing these long-term deals.
Do we think that deal would have been worth it had we kept him around, though?
He has 2 years remaining, which means he's been on it for 4 years. I would say he's lived up to the $3.5 million in each of the 4 years. I mean, he was injured last season, but you can't hold that against the man. He came back this season and he didn't miss a beat, really. I mean, I didn't watch a whole lot of Seattle Kraken hockey, but it seemed like he did what he's contracted to do. He was a crap disturber, and he put in some goals at timely moments.
He put together a season that he had 80 and played all 82 games, 35 points. Is that a career high? Oh my goodness, it was a career high. So yes, you could say he is still doing the thing. Yeah, that was a contract that we looked at and went, okay, every season is a new ball game with this contract. Every season it needs to be reevaluated. So far, he's passed every reevaluation. So,
Yeah.
Had we not lost him to the expansion draft, obviously our bottom six would be a lot better. It'd be a little more expensive, but yeah, I think it'd be worth it. So there's that. The Brandon Tanev contract has turned out to be, while on a different team and while not great circumstances, a good deal for Jim Rutherford. Way to go.
Yeah. I mean, even if he falls off a cliff the last 2 years here, if he was with the Penguins the entire 6 years and he had the 4 seasons that he's had so far since he signed that deal, and then even if the past next 2 seasons aren't great, I'd say that was a good signing by Jim Rutherford. So I just wanted to revisit that because I thought about that. I was like, man, he has 2 years left, and it says extension next to his name on Cap Friendly. I was like, oh, he must have signed an extension. No, I just completely had forgotten how long, forever and ever, amen long, how long Jim Rutherford signed Brandon Tanev. And I remember now our reactions to that. And it was not the most pretty of podcasts when we were talking about Brandon Tanev being signed by the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, it wasn't a fun time, but I mean, like I said, it wasn't Rutherford that lost him, to be fair.
This is true. And I think this just goes to show that no matter what signing is made this offseason, how long the term is, even if it's for a bottom six player, which is going to be important to this offseason for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just stay the course and evaluate it year by year like we were doing with Brandon Tanev, because it certainly has worked out on that contract for both the player and for the team that has had him under contract, whether that be the Penguins or most recently the Seattle Kraken. But let's move over and talk a little bit about some free agents who are actually on expiring deals at the moment. We're going to call this segment Help or Hurt, because I'm going to give you a name, Horwat, of a speedy free agent forward that is going to be a unrestricted free agent, not a restricted free agent. And you're going to simply tell me whether they would help or hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins next season. Because, as most of you know, head coach Mike Sullivan spoke to the media last Friday, and he was asked by, I believe, Dave Molinari, what is one aspect of play of that your team lacks? That's in layman's terms, that's exactly what he asked. What did your team lack when it comes to what traits were they lacking last season? Mike Sullivan said speed right out of the gate. He said team speed was not there, is not where we wanted it to be, and that's something we'd like to change heading into next season. And then he said, yeah, and there's a bunch of other aspects, but speed is the one that he actually highlighted, actually outwardly said. So I'm going to say that's pretty high on his priority list when it comes to hoping for the players, or at least conveying to Kyle Dubas what type of players he would like to get this offseason in the free agent market. So let's talk about four of them, two of them in this segment, then we'll carry over two in the next segment. Let's start with Alexander Kerfoot. Obviously, former Toronto Maple Leaf under Kyle Dubas. He is 28 years old at the moment, a bottom six center that can also play wing and has played up and down the lineup in Toronto over the past couple of seasons. And he can kill penalties. Horwat, would Alexander Kerfoot help or hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins?
That's a off the jump. That's a tough one, because you look at Kerfoot and you kind of figure, well, he's not the greatest player. I don't necessarily think of speed when I think of Alexander Kerfoot, but he's probably a guy that at the end of the day could genuinely really help the Penguins out. He's probably not going to be super duper expensive, coming off of a deal that netted him 3.5 against the cap. He also, from the numbers, it looks like he hasn't missed a game since before the pandemic, which on a Toronto Maple Leafs team that is usually stacked with talent, that says something. He's played 82 two straight seasons, all 56 in the shortened year, and then 65 if that is how many the Leafs played that season in the year that got cut short. It looks like he hasn't missed a game since 2018-19, which even then he played 78. This dude's a warrior. He doesn't miss many hockey games, which is something you can immediately commend. I think he would help, though. I think just on the bottom line, almost anyone's going to help this team. Let's also just be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, he couldn't be more than. But you're right. He can play up and down the lineup, but I just feel like he wouldn't be more than a third line guy on this team, on the Penguins, that can help out in certain situations. 82 games last season, 10 goals, 22 assists, 32 points. That's third line numbers for the Penguins. At least that's what it should be.
Well, yeah, it wasn't really third line numbers for the Penguins last season, but then again, the Penguins really didn't have very many third liners last season. But no, for Kerfoot, the best ability is sometimes availability, and we've seen that certainly with the Pittsburgh Penguins and certainly in the bottom six last season. So it would be nice to have a guy that you can count on to be healthy and be in the lineup every single night. And no, he's not a burner. None of these guys that we're going to mention are really burners, but they're more fleet of foot than some of the guys that we saw on the Pittsburgh Penguins last season. Certainly more fleet of foot than a Jeff Carter would be. But team speed, you want guys that can move the puck. You want guys that can get on their horse when they need to, and Alexander Kerfoot is that type of guy. And the one thing I really like about him is, one, you're going to get him at a discount because he's not going to be making that $3.5 million that he made on his last deal. And two, I want penalty killers. And you always could use penalty killers, especially when they can take the face off. Alexander Kerfoot is a penalty killing center / winger. I think that's somebody the Pittsburgh Penguins need, because as I talked about, was it yesterday? This week has kind of blended together, Horwat. I talked about it at some point this week, so you could just listen to the 3 episodes that have already been put out. that Brian Rust needs to be taken off the penalty kill. And in
Mhm.
order to do that, the Penguins need to bring in more penalty killing forwards. Alexander Kerfoot fits that bill, fits the bill of a speedy free agent forward. So I'm going to say he would help the Pittsburgh Penguins bottom six in year one, at the very least.
At the very least, yes. Like I said, pretty much anyone in this league is going to help the Penguins out in the bottom six department. That's just the way this team kind of rolls going into the summer, right? Plus, Alexander Kerfoot's got that great Kyle Dubas effect. Kyle Dubas is loyal to his guys, and
Yeah,
this
there
is
is the
another
connection
one.
there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're going to find Dubas connections all over the place, I think. You're going to find connections to the Leafs and all kinds of things. It's going to be a fun summer. We might pick up a couple of Leafs in terms of players, front office, executives, a little bit of everything. And Kerfoot could be a definite benefit for the Penguins.
Mm-hmm. Another 28-year-old that I want to ask you about is somebody that's always seemingly been a name mentioned around the Pittsburgh bubble, but has never gotten in and been actually acquired by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Somebody that we talked about at the trade deadline, somebody that we talked about last offseason as a free agent, and that's Max Domi. Max Domi is 28 years old right now, was in love with Chicago when he was there. He enjoyed playing for the Blackhawks organization. There were several stories about him potentially not wanting to be traded from the Chicago Blackhawks at the deadline. He did end up being dealt, goes over to the Dallas Stars, and he was great for Dallas as well in their route to a Western Conference Finals appearance. He had 20 goals and 56 points this season on a $3 million salary. Horwat, would Max Domi help or hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins?
This is an easy one. He would absolutely help. I mean, this is a guy that we wanted the Penguins to target at the trade deadline. If we wanted the Penguins to target them at the trade deadline, we probably still want them on this team. Easy as that. I mean, Max Domi played 60 games with the Blackhawks and is still their leading point scorer.
Mm-hmm.
By only 4 points, but still, he had 49 with the Hawks alone this past year. Finished up in 80 games played, 20 goals, 36 assists for 56 whole points. Can't go wrong with a guy like that. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, cannot. I think that's an easy, of course he helps. And I didn't realize how much he's bounced around this league.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Interesting. That's really interesting because he seems like a guy that, and he's probably going to get it if it's not, if he doesn't come here at least, he's probably going to get the big, long deal to be with the team for a long time. It's something he deserves. He's good enough to do something like that. And he's got a great chance to really make a name for himself.
Yeah, when you look at Max Domi, he's a guy that can play center. He's a guy that can play left wing. And he's certainly a player that, listen, God forbid, knock on wood, something happens to one of the top two centers. Max Domi's a name that you can plug in there, and it's not as drastic as a drop-off as it would be if it's Jeff Carter at his advanced age, as it is Ryan Poehling if he has to step up and play that role. Even going back a little bit, Teddy Bluger, even better than when we had Evan Rodrigues, who at one point was a first-line center for the Pittsburgh Penguins due to injuries. So Domi would be an improvement on all of those names over the past couple of seasons, and he can play that left wing, which is important to me, because when we look at this team, what is the one position outside of the bottom six that they need to fill? Left wing. They do not have positional depth at left wing right now, certainly not in the top tier. They have Jake Gensel. Then it's who, right? Drew O'Connor's a pending RFA. I'm assuming they're going to re-sign him or qualify him or whatever they end up doing.
Yes.
But Drew O'Connor is no more than a third-line left wing at best, at the moment at least. I mean, you never know what the future holds, but I would say that he's going to be a top six talent. Danton Heinen's not under contract right now. Valtteri Pustin didn't play a single game in the NHL, so I'm not ready to crown him a top six forward for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Am I missing anybody here, Horwat? I mean, Jake Gensel is the top of the list there, and then there's really nobody underneath them.
Jason Zucker, but he's also not signed.
Again, yeah, not signed at the moment, and there's no guarantee that Jason Zucker will be signed this summer.
Yeah, no guarantee at all. Alex Nylander, he flips to the right most times, I think, so there's that. Mikael Granlund's a center and right wing. Ryan Rust can play others. Yeesh.
Yeah, without taking from the right side, there's really nothing on the left side behind Jake Gensel. I'm not saying Max Domi is the end all be all answer, but I'm saying he's somebody you could plug in there and play and probably get top 6 production out of when he's playing with Malkin and Brian Rust or Ricardo Rakell or whoever's on the right side.
Yeah. So anybody to help with the left wing depth would be nice and useful. And Max Domi's a great option. Jason Zucker's a great option too. But again, age, hard miles. You just never know anymore. So yeah, I like Max Domi, and obviously he helps.
Well, yes. And even though a bit undersized, he plays a similar game to Jason Zucker.
Oh, yeah.
He's a pest. He's going to get down and, I'm not sure how much net front work he does, but he's certainly going to get into the scrums after the whistle. And the Penguins, I think they need a little bit more of an edge. They need more of that pest quality that's, Josh Archibald type, but actually good at playing the game. Like, nothing against Josh Archibald. I shouldn't diss Josh Archibald because he played his role, right?
Correct.
He came in, he did the work that he was expected to do and lived up to the small contract that he was given, and that was it. So I shouldn't diss Josh Archibald, but Max Domi is basically Josh Archibald if Josh Archibald had offensive talent.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. But yeah, it's the short stature guys that play like wrecking balls. Max Domi just brings an offensive edge to him.
Exactly. So, in retrospect, help or hurt's probably not a great name for this segment because I think we're probably going to say all 4 of these guys would help the Pittsburgh Penguins at the moment just because of how poor the bottom 6 was constructed last season. But we're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll talk about the other 2 players and whether or not it's probably going to be help, whether or not they would help the Pittsburgh Penguins next season if they were signed. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Horwat, before we get into the second half of this help or hurt segment, talking about some speedy free agent forwards, has the smog, I guess is what you called it, reached Pittsburgh yet?
Yes. So part of, it was definitely here while I was gone in Nashville. Part of the entire trip home, basically, we... at one point we were driving through Ohio farmland where flat, you can kind of see through all of the farms, and also just picture the most generic farm in your head. That is exactly what this area was.
McDonald, yes, got it.
Yes, but no, it's I was able just to kind of look out over the farmland and tell it looked like a morning fog. It looked like a morning fog in the middle of the day. So yeah, it's here, it's everywhere. As I look out the window right now. It looks like there's a huge cloud in the sky, but there's most definitely not. So it's wild. And those pictures of New York last night and yesterday,
oh my goodness,
horrifying.
Yeah, it looks like a scene out of like I Am Legend or some post-apocalyptic. Like it looks like they took the video game Fallout and just put it in New York City. It's crazy. And here's the thing: there have been many times where I've gotten an alert on my phone, hey, low air quality alert, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, and you can't really tell. Walked outside yesterday to go get lunch. You can tell there's a scent and odor to it. It's bad. So everybody out there, obviously, stay safe and don't go outside if you don't have to, just because it's not good for anybody to be breathing in that. And obviously, especially everybody in Canada, stay safe. All of our Canadian listeners, we hope that you aren't affected by the wildfires and everything that's happening north of the border. So we send our well wishes, and we hope that everything hopefully comes to a conclusion up there in Canada, because Jesus, some of the videos you see, some of the reports that you hear is not good.
I haven't looked too far into anything, but it's been I don't even want to say the word wild because it's a wildfire, but it's been interesting. It's been absolutely I never realized how much effect something like that could have on the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about wildfires in California for how many years now? But this one, it seems to be having a bit of a different approach and a different effect to all the surrounding areas. So yeah, stay safe out there. And what did I see? That it's like this is the equivalent of 6 cigarettes or something like that in New York right now.
Jesus.
For like, I think in a 24-hour span, something interesting like that. Breathe safely, and hockey. Let's talk about hockey again.
Yeah, it's always tough to make those transitions again. So we're going to pivot real hard to the right and talk about speedy free agent forwards that the Pittsburgh Penguins could go after. And here's one familiar name for the folks out there, whether you're listening to us anywhere you get your podcast or watching us on Inside the Penguins on YouTube. 29 years old, free agent, coming off a 1-year deal with the Colorado Avalanche. Some of you already know who I'm about to say. Would Evan Rodrigues help or hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins if he rejoined them next season?
See, just because I always stand on weird ground with Evan Rodrigues, this could go either way for me. Obviously he helps because, like I said before, anyone helps. I think this is a guy that turns into more of a, do you want him back? I genuinely don't know, because I'm a big fan of, especially this season for the Penguins, just finding that change, finding the changes to put the team in different directions. Sure, Evan Rodrigues is a change from what we had last season, but it is also just a rehashing of seasons prior. So I think personally I avoid it for sake of, let's find someone different. But at the same time, he absolutely helps. Absolutely helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's the weird thing with Evan Rodrigues. He blew up last season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, 82 games, 19 goals, by far a career high, 43 points, by far a career high. And we said, okay, maybe it was an anomaly, though, because 33 of those 43 points came in the first 30 games. And then he played decently in the playoffs, and the Penguins said, you know what? We're not going to give you the $2 million. You can go find it somewhere else. He goes to Colorado. Another big portion of that was Pittsburgh Penguins dealt with injuries. We just mentioned it in the last segment. At one point, Evan Rodrigues, may it be for 1 game or 2 games or whatever it was the number 1 center for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So he was given an elevated platform to play, given more time on ice. So you go back to this season with the Colorado Avalanche. What does he get? Elevated minutes. Because Gabe Landeskog, I don't believe he played a single game last season. He's not playing another game next season, which kind of complicates this a little bit. They might want to bring Evan Rodrigues back because of that. But 16 goals, 39 points in 69 games. So right up there with his numbers from the season before. So is this a 2-year anomaly with Evan Rodrigues, or is this the new norm for a player who is at his peak, at his prime right now? And should the Pittsburgh Penguins cash in on that, or is he going to turn back into a pumpkin once he's handed third line minutes once again?
And that's the big question. I don't even think that's one that you should test. You see where I'm coming from with this is that he would definitely help, but you don't want to run that risk. You need a proven commodity. That's at least in my opinion. And like I said, I've always been on weird ground with Evan Rodrigues. So there's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the parts of his game that I like, for one, he's fleet of foot, right? He does bring more of a speed element to his game, at least more than we saw last season. He plays all facets of the game as well. So if you need somebody on power play 1, he spent some time up there. If you need somebody on the penalty kill, he spent a lot of time there. He can go up and down the lineup. He could be a 4th line left wing if you need him to be. Or he could be your first line center, as we've seen. Clearly not the best of options if he ends up being your first line center, specifically if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins. But hey, if you need him to be there, he can perform and he can keep his head above water. But like I said, that I don't want, as you mentioned as well, I don't want to go back after older players. Teddy Bluger might be it. Although, you know what? No, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say Jordan Staal after seeing some of his underlying stats, man, but I just don't want to see the team slow down more than they already have, and apparently neither does Mike Sullivan. So I would say bringing in Evan Rodrigues is more likely to hurt than help, because you know what he is at his best, and he's shown it the past 2 seasons. Can that continue a 3rd season when hopefully you're using him in a lesser role? I would lean towards no. So I would say he actually would hurt the Pittsburgh Penguins, because I feel like, nothing against him, I hate to say it, but seems like it's about time for the clock to strike midnight on his Cinderella couple of seasons.
That's one way of putting it, but yeah, it's the time is just most likely running out. We know when he can be at his best. We've seen it. And then it was the mid-season fall off.
Mm-hmm.
We know how quickly things changed with him. I mean, yeah, 39 points in his 69 games this past season is good. That's quality stuff for a depth player. We just need the sure shot guy that's going to be beneficial full time and that we know will. Like I said, he's an anomaly of a player. We're not exactly sure what he's going to bring year after year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just one to avoid. Not like I said, I just want to see change. I don't want to keep rehashing old players for the sake of 30 games of success.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Whoever Kyle Dubas brings in, you're rolling the dice because you're not going to be able to spend an absorbent amount of money to get a sure thing in your bottom six. It feels like it's a more risky roll of the dice with Evan Rodrigues. So I would say hurt. I would say stay away from it, even though he's probably only going to go for $2 million once again. But let's talk about somebody who I'm already going to say it before we get into it. He would 100% help the Pittsburgh Penguins. He would have helped the Pittsburgh Penguins if they went after him at the trade deadline. He's certainly helping the Vegas Golden Knights at the moment, and that's 27-year-old Ivan Barbashev. Would he help or hurt the Penguins, Horwat? I think I know the answer.
Oh, would he ever help? Yeah, he'd help.
My goodness.
That's an end of discussion. No, it's what more needs to be said, really. Do we need to read the numbers? Do we need to say what he's doing in the postseason? Do we have to talk about how that team, is about to win the damn thing? There's all kinds of different directions you can go with this conversation, and we just know that he's helping. In his full 82-game season, with a trade, 16 goals, 29 assists for 45 points, which is good. Then have you seen his playoff numbers this year? In 19 games played, 6 goals, 11 assists for 17 points. This man's good. This is a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's not slow. He's not, again, none of these players are burners, but they're certainly somebody that can lean towards playing the speed game. But he's also physical.
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy, was he physical in game 2. Obviously, we hope for the best for Radko Gudas, but that was one of the most bone-chilling reverse hits I have seen in a long time. And a lot of people are saying, it's predatory. It was dirty. I don't see that. I think it's a reverse hit. He shouldered ahead. Yeah, unfortunate, but to me, that looked clean. So did the Matthew Tkachuk hit on Jack Eichel. I didn't see any real massively dirty hits in that game. Certainly not from Ivan Barbashev. And that shift alone, he had 3 massive freaking body checks. And not to mention the fact that he's great offensively as well. So at 27 years old, you're catching him right in his prime. You're going to pay the Stanley Cup tax if you try to bring him in. He's right now making $2.25 million. That's probably going to go upwards of 3.5, close to 4, I would say, for next season. But when you're looking for somebody that can help out your bottom 6, man, that would be a great get for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know how they would be able to get him and afford to be able to fix all these other areas, as we'll talk about goaltender in the next segment, but it certainly would be nice if they would be able to bring in Ivan Barbashev.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much he throws the body around. He had 182 hits this past season between the two teams. He's got 59, I think I saw so far in this postseason. I didn't realize all that. That's the kind of thing we like. Whenever we were discussing him during the trade deadline, I would have been all for him had I understood that part of his game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much like you. I'm back on the Ivan Barbashev train. That dollar amount's going to skyrocket, though.
Oh yeah,
that's going to be a huge issue for the Penguins and anyone who tries to sign him. That's going to be a large dollar amount, especially if they close this out soon.
I'm not sure how many conversations Kyle Dubas has had at this moment with Evgeny Malkin, but he needs to rope Evgeny Malkin in and get him on the train here and say, hey, listen, Gino, we need you to make your pitch to Barbashev because we need to bring your fellow Russian over. We need that help in the bottom 6. So let's hope that Dubas can play the cards right and hopefully maybe even get Barbashev at a discount. I don't think that's going to happen at 27 years old. Having the playoffs that he's having, he's probably going to cash in and probably going to be out of the Pittsburgh Penguins price range. But if he's not, certainly would look good on this roster next season.
He would. He's going to get a huge paycheck, though. It's going to be well-deserved.
100%. 100%. So we've talked about forwards. It's time, as we're going to do until there is news to be made, to talk about the goaltenders. Earlier this week, I talked about Connor Hellebuck, and I will give you this answer, Horwat. Connor Hellebuck's numbers will not be in this next segment. We're going to play Name That Stat Line, which is a game that if you've been a listener for a long time, we play a lot. Actually, we play like 3 or 4 times a year, but we need to start playing more often because it's a nice and fun and engaging exercise here. We'll take a break real quick, and then when we come back, we'll talk about that and play Name That Stat Line. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Well, we teased it at the end of the last segment. We're going to get into it here. Name That Stat Line, Horwat, where you will have 3 guesses to name the player that I am talking about based on simply their stat line. These are all free agent or potentially trade acquirable. I don't know how to even say that. Trade block goaltenders. That's how
They're
we'll
on the
say
trade
that.
market.
Yeah, they're on the market. They're rumored to be available from their current team. They're all goaltenders because the Pittsburgh Penguins' #1 priority this offseason is goaltender. So, Horwat, are you ready? We have 5 names here. You already know one of them is not Connor Hellebuck.
Okay, knock that one out.
There you go. Let's start with this gentleman. 90 games played in the last 3 seasons. He has a 40, 37, and 8 record, .918 save percentage, 2.51 goals against average, and 33.1 goals saved above expected. Can you name that stat line, Mr. Horwat?
So you said free agent or trade market value goalie. How many games did you say? 90 in the last 3?
90 games in the last 3 seasons.
Ooh, 90. 90 is what's throwing me off because that's about 30. They're about 33. 30 a season? 30 a season. Let's do math correctly.
Yes.
Which isn't your normal starting goaltender numbers. So I would have to think it's somebody young or that was a backup, which doesn't help me at all.
I love the outward thought process that you're going through here.
Because there's only so many people it can be. Is Frederik Andersen an answer?
It is not Frederik Andersen. Do you want one of your 2 guesses?
You mean hints, but yes.
Hints. Yeah. One of your 2 hints. This goaltender was drafted in the 1st round by the Washington Capitals in the 2006 NHL entry draft.
2006?
2006. You were saying young goaltender. I was like, not quite, but
so then
we'll
it's
try to point you in a different direction here.
Oh, his name's not coming to me. The one that we played in 2000, played against in 2009 in round 2. Oh, I can't remember his name, but is it that one? The name's not coming to me.
Are you speaking of Semyon Varlamov?
Varlamov, yes. Played with Colorado for a couple seasons. Yeah, Semyon Varlamov.
And most recently was the 1B goaltender and now backup goaltender in the New York Islanders organization. Yep, Semyon Varlamov, 90 games played, 33.1 goals saved above expected. So he hasn't played poorly in his time in New York. Certainly wasn't when it was the 1A, 1B with him and Robin Lehner, but with Ilya Sorokin there, now Varlamov's playing time has taken a dip, and he is a free agent this summer. What would you think of Semyon Varlamov coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins?
I kind of forgot he was on the island in the first place. He's old. I would assume he'd be coming in a backup role, and we would probably still have to find a starter. I mean, unless you're rolling with Jari again, but if he's looking for 5 to 6 years on a contract, yikes. I'm avoiding Varlamov just because I'm assuming he would be a backup, and we need to worry about a starter first.
Yeah, 35 years old, probably not hiring him to be your no-doubt starting goaltender. And Semyon Varlamov hasn't been a no-doubt starting goaltender since his time in Colorado. So I wouldn't hate the idea of Varlamov if he comes in on a massive discount as the backup, like you said, even as a 1B. Like you said, if they bring back Tristan Jarry, Semyon Varlamov has been a proven backup, has been a proven 1B option in the NHL for the past several seasons. And when you look at his numbers, I mean, Yeah, the record isn't phenomenal. Let's not forget how bad the Islanders were last season. Not this past one, but the one previous to it when they missed the playoffs. And a 918 save percentage still with a 2.51 goals allowed average. I don't know how much of that is being protected by the fact that at that moment, for most of these games, he was on a Barry Trotz coach team that values keeping the score low. But still good numbers for the 35-year-old.
Not terrible. Yeah, it's just he gets overshadowed also because he's on the Islanders and he's playing behind arguably one of the best goalies in the league.
Yeah, 100%.
So it gets difficult there. Like you said, when you said the Islanders, I forgot he was there. Then he pulled his stats up. He's been there for three or four seasons. Since when?
He was on that team, I believe, both series against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Definitely not the starter, but yes.
No, he wasn't. Sorokin was the starter in the most recent one, and then was it Leonard in the one where the Pittsburgh Penguins got swept? I think it was Robin Leonard.
It may have been because Varlamov was not yet there.
Oh, okay.
What do we got here? Playoffs.
Oh, he was also the 1A, 1B with Thomas Greiss at some point there. Thomas Greiss was up in the Islanders at one point, too.
Oh, and he had that really bonkers season. Yeah. Robin Leonard played 8 games in the postseason that season. Yeah, he played all 8. Yeah, because they swept us and then got swept.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Robin Leonard's the goalie that did it with Thomas Greiss as the backup. I forgot Thomas Greiss's bonkers season.
Yes. So, Semyon Varlamov were both kind of okay if you bring him in as the backup, but you have other work to do. Let's talk about this second goaltender. 107 games played, 69 wins, 33 losses, and 7 overtime losses. A 911 save percentage, 2.44 goals against average, and 13.6 goals saved above expected.
Ignoring the analytics stats. Coming up free agent. How many games did you say in the last 3 seasons?
107.
3 seasons, 107.
Your long division
in this list
is Tristan Jarry. I will say Tristan Jarry is in this list, but this is not Tristan Jarry, so that's going to count as one of your guesses there, bud.
Fine by me. Do you have another hint here? Because 107. You threw me off with the Varlamov thing, so now I'm completely forgetting who's available.
All right, your one hint or one of 2 hints I could give you is this goaltender has played under Kyle Dubas in the past.
Is this one Freddie Anderson?
This is Freddie Anderson.
I was so close.
This is 100% Freddie Anderson. Do you think the Penguins should acquire or at least inquire about Freddie Anderson's services for next season?
So Freddie, he's such an interesting one because he's a little older, 33, going to be 34 before the start of the season, but also injury prone. I think you were the one that called him just an older Tristan Jarry.
Yeah.
And I can understand that. I think his numbers inflated because it's Carolina, maybe slightly, but also just looking at those starting numbers. I mean, you said 107 games in the last 3 seasons. That includes 24 in the. I have to remember that there's a lockout, or not a lockout shortened season, a COVID shortened season as part of these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right. He played 24 games that season. That was his last year at Toronto. 52 last year, which is pretty good. And then 34 this past year. Dude does get injured fairly often.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would avoid it as well. I know I'm slimming down the list of options for the Penguins here, but I think you have to hit a home run with your goalie this year.
100%.
So if Frederik Anderson's only going to net you a double, you have to avoid it.
Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. The Carolina Hurricanes had one of the most stable goaltending rooms for over a decade. It was Cam Ward. Cam Ward and, hey, who wants to be the backup? It was Cam frickin' Ward. The Carolina Hurricanes, since Cam Ward has left, have just treated goaltenders like bubblegum. They chew them up and they spit them out. You look at what? Alex Nedeljkovic, Peter Mrazek, Antti Ranta, Pyotr Kochetkov, now Freddie Anderson. These guys, they run through goaltenders, and they always use multiple goaltenders every single season. I think I'm even missing one or two in the last couple of seasons. So do I want to go after Freddie Anderson? Not particularly, but I do think that when he is on and when he's healthy, he is still a number one goaltender in the league. You're just taking the gamble that he's going to be on and going to be healthy. And with where the Pittsburgh Penguins have been at the past 3 seasons with the health of their goaltenders, that's not something I want to sign up for once again. Now, will Kyle Dubas disagree with that? Potentially, because he knows more about Freddie Anderson. He has a history with Freddie Anderson, and he knows what makes him tick. So does that lead to Freddie Anderson potentially coming to the Pittsburgh Penguins? Possibly, especially because he's going to get a lesser contract than he did before. He's taking a pay cut because he didn't outperform what he was making in his previous deal. So it's going to be interesting to see if Freddie Anderson ends up ever being actually tied to the Pittsburgh Penguins because of that connection with Kyle Dubas. But I don't think that he would be the answer for the Penguins as a starting goaltender.
No, he wouldn't be. Like, it's plain and simple. You have to hit a home run. You have to. If you net a double or a triple, cool. That's good. You got a good. That means you got a good goalie, but it's not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It might get you into the playoffs, but he's not going to get you on that deep run that you're looking for.
Yeah. So let's move over to the next one. We're taking a little bit more time on this, but it's because it's the goaltending position, and it's something that we're going to talk about all summer long until a move is made. This goaltender
did call it the most important position too. So
that's exactly right. So this goaltender, last 3 seasons, 144 games played, 80, 40, and 16 record, or sorry, 83, 40, and 16 record, 913 save percentage, 2.66 goals allowed average, and 30.4 goals saved above expected.
That's a really good goalie. Is that Connor Hellebuck?
It is not Connor Hellebuck.
Who's left? It just sounds like a really good, because what was that record?
83 wins, 40 losses, and 16 overtime losses.
Ton of starts, or a ton of games played.
144, no doubt starting goaltender.
Oh, I forget who's left. John Gibson?
That is not John Gibson. No, John Gibson does not have that good of a record with the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, his numbers aren't that great. Whoops. Yeah, I don't know. Who's what that kind of that amount of games is what's throwing me off.
Mm-hmm.
Who was for sale? Can I get the hint that's going to give me the answer?
Your hint: he was a second-round draft pick in 2013.
That's not going to give me the answer. 2013, second round. Who was available? Yikes. I have no idea.
You have no idea? Do you want to give up on this one?
No, you have a second hint for me, or is it game over?
Second hint, his amateur team was the Edmonton Oil Kings.
Are you reading me Tristan Jarry's numbers?
Those are Tristan Jarry's numbers.
I hate this so much. I hate this game.
What did you say? Oh, that's a really good goaltender. Oh, is that really Connor Hellebuck? No, that is Tristan Jarry, who is the incumbent starting goaltender on the Pittsburgh Penguins, looking for a new deal. Rumored to be 5 or 6 years is what he's looking for.
Man, the issue is what are his numbers not including last year or this past season?
I can look that up really quickly.
Much better than what see, that's what he just had such an enigma of this past season that we're just ready to pull the carpet from him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I didn't realize he played that many games. That's interesting.
So the previous 2 seasons before this one, he had a .915 save percentage. So his save percentage dipped down 2 points because of his performance this past season. He had a 2.55 goals allowed average. So that jumped about 0.11. And he had 22.5 goals saved above expected, which means this season he had about 8 goals saved above expected for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
What a weird team the Penguins were. Did we throw all of our baggage onto Tristan Jarry? Because even looking at this past season, okay, the save percentage of goals against average aren't great. He was 24, 13, and 7, which equates out to 24 and 20, which isn't totally terrible, but it's not good enough.
Here's the thing.
It's the injuries, it's the inconsistencies, it's everything else that got in the way.
If Tristan Jarry had never played a playoff game up to this point, would people be that upset about it?
Forgot about the playoffs, too. Yeah, so it's This is a great experiment, by the way.
This is why I was looking at this, and this is why goals saved above expected is so important, because that tries to take out the team you're playing for, right? That is the goals saved above expected from an average NHL goaltender. Freddie Anderson over the last 3 years, 13.6. He is considered one of the most impressive names on the free agent market. Semyon Varlamov, 33.1. That's great, right? But the rest of his numbers, it's only in 90 games played. Tristan Jarry played 54 more games and has 3 less goals saved above expected. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, would I give him 5 to 6 years?
No.
No, I wouldn't give him 5 to 6 years, especially with a chronic hip injury. But I also think everybody's focus right now is how he performed after the hip injury. Don't forget, he was a Vezina caliber goaltender in the first two months of the season. The numbers he was putting up, he had like a 940 save percentage. He did the bulk of his work when it comes to goals saved above expected. I think he was at 15 or so before he got injured. He was extremely impressive. Even when the Penguins were on that 7-game losing streak, it was not on Tristan Jarry.
Right. We all knew that at the time.
So people forget how good he was at the beginning of the season. The problem is, how impactful is that hip injury going to be? Like, that is questionable. And as I mentioned, you cannot forget how poor he's performed in the postseason up to this point in his career. Now, was that just one series? Yes, it's a very small sample size. He had a bad series against a New York Islanders team that just seems to have the Pittsburgh Penguins number over the past 5 seasons. So you can't give him 5 to 6, but could you give the guy a 4-year deal at...
I don't know.
It might be your best option. That's the problem.
That is the problem. The interesting thing is, I know it's wrong to eliminate his 11-0-2 run from these numbers, but you eliminate that 11-0-2 run, and suddenly you're looking at a goalie that put together a 13-5 season.
Yes, the one thing that I look at with record is what's in front of him, because I mean, the Penguins team as a whole was putrid. I mean, obviously excluding the guys that went over a point per game and were great in the top 6, but defense was bad. It was really bad last season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It dropped significantly. The bottom 6 did not contribute for 90% of the season, and Tristan Jarry was playing injured. There's a reason that Sullivan kept saying, we're still trying to get him up to speed. Like, he is not 100%. That's basically, he was sounding the alarms like, hey, our goaltender isn't 100% right now. And they're saying it might not be injury. He's just not playing at the top of his game.
He's such a... The goalie situation the Penguins have this summer is such a work of art that it's one of those weird works of art that you look at and go, it's definitely an abstract painting.
It's Gothic.
Yeah. What beauty can be pulled from this? Because he might be the best option. Yes. Is he truly, though? Because again, like I said a couple things before, both of these on Freddie Anderson. Were his numbers inflated because of the team in front of him? Probably a little bit. But also, you have to hit a home run here.
Yeah.
Is Tristan Jarry going to net you that home run?
Yeah.
Hard to say. So I also want to see so much change on this team that I'm saying move on from Tristan Jarry. I struggle to... free agent targets aren't going to be the answer. It seems to either. You might just have to make the trade for somebody big, but again, who? There's so much. Like this is why it's a work of art. It's so complicated that so many different facets from multiple different people around the NHL are going to be involved in this. It's going to be exciting, that's for sure.
We'll see. Because remember, the last time the Pittsburgh Penguins needed a goaltender on the free agent market, they brought in Antti Niemi. But let's not get into that. Let's move on, and we have 2 more of these. We'll burn through them really quickly because Tristan Jarry was the one I wanted to get you to. This player, 97 games played, so right back down to 1B or backup level. 40, 36, and 14 record, a 907 save percentage, 2.98 goals against average, and only 2.1 goals saved above expected over the past 3 seasons.
Is this one John Gibson?
This is not John Gibson.
Dang. Okay, I don't know. I'll keep him quick and just not ask for hints. I'll just go, I do not know.
Okay, that's Alex Nedeljkovic. a goaltender that a lot of players have, or a lot of fans and a lot of people on social media have highlighted as a potential answer to the Penguins' goaltending woes. 2.1 goals saved above expected over the past 3 seasons does not scream answer to the Penguins' problems to me, Horwat.
No, thank you.
No. I mean, decent 1B.
He had that one good season with Carolina, correct?
Correct. And then Carolina said, I don't want to pay you. And Detroit said, I'll pay you. And then it bit them in the butt.
Yep. Then he cashed out and then it fell apart, which is quite funny. No offense to Alex Nedeljkovic. I'm sure he's got skill in him. I mean, he is good enough to play in the NHL one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably earn a contract because of that one season. Oh, man. And by one season, hold on. Let's clarify that. One back half of the season, right? He was 15-5 in 23 games. 15-5-3 in 23 games. That's not like he played the whole year. So, anyway.
He played enough to get rookie Calder Trophy votes? He was a finalist.
Finished third on the all-rookie team. I don't know how many games need to be minimum to quote-unquote lead the league in save percentage or goals against average, but his .932 save percentage and 1.9 goals against average is pretty good.
Yeah,
even if it is
the next couple of seasons.
Yikes!
Yeah, because he's down at a 907 right now. So if he started with a 923 in that first season,
went to a 901, then an 895.
Ooh,
yeah. No.
And again, on Detroit, understandably, Detroit is a rebuilding team, but the 2.1 goals saved over expected and the lows of the lows that we've seen from Alex Nedeljkovic over the past couple of seasons, he's not the answer for your starter 100%. As a backup or a 1B, is he just Casey DeSmith? Is he not just Casey DeSmith at this point?
Just a younger Casey DeSmith.
It's just a different name.
Yeah.
And he's younger. And might be cheaper. So at that point, if he's younger, cheaper, and the same goaltender, I guess it would be a net positive. But the Penguins need a starter first. So I would suggest they figure that out, and it's not Alex Nedeljkovic. Last one here. 143 games played, so one less than Tristan Jarry. Looking at a no-doubt starter. Record of 41 wins, 76 losses, and 26 overtime losses. A .902 save percentage, which is below league average at this point. 3.43 goals against average, which is worse than league average at this point. And taking out the defense in front of him, negative 21.3 goals saved above expected. By far the worst of any goaltender we've mentioned here on this show today.
Is this one Pittsburgh native John Gibson?
This is Whitehall native John Gibson, yes.
Hilarious. Yeah, I know. Listen, I know those numbers suck. And it really is the Pittsburgh draw that has everyone clamoring for him. It is. It is. Did I fall for the bait? Absolutely. At the same time, we all acknowledge that John Gibson was, at one point, a very good goalie who deserved a better team in front of him.
Yeah, there's a reason the Anaheim Ducks for so many years just kept winning the Pacific Division.
Yep.
They were a good team. He was a good goaltender. But guess what? The team got worse in front of him. He held the fort down as long as he could. And at this point, he might be, who knows what he might be. But he's certainly not somebody that you trade the farm for, which is what Anaheim's going to ask.
Yeah. That's the issue, is that Anaheim's going to have a big ask for him. I mean, he could have been a solid option a couple seasons ago, right? I think that's also part of the mystique, is that we should have gone for, in hindsight, obviously, hindsight being 2020 here with what we've gotten with Jarry. We wanted Jarry to, excel a lot more than what he did. But in hindsight, maybe we should have gone for John Gibson back then.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe the Penguins should have protected protected Marc-Andre Fleury over Matt Murray. I mean,
exactly.
we could play that game all day.
Exactly.
Maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins should have protected anybody besides Teddy Bluger and Jeff Carter, who they protected in the Seattle Kraken expansion draft. Maybe the Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't know. You could maybes don't win Stanley Cups, unfortunately.
Protecting Teddy Bluger was that was the fun pick, though. That was the fun. We're gonna be a little cheeky here and protect Teddy Bluger.
Here's one thing. He was young
yes.
at the time. He was already established as a fourth line center in this league.
Mm-hmm.
I could see you projecting him to potentially become your third line center and saying, hey, we're built down the middle. Yes. Protecting the 36-year-old at the time, Jeff Carter, over 24-year-old Jared McCann, or trading Jared McCann. Sorry. They didn't even have the opportunity to. Trading Jared McCann because you didn't want to protect him. That's an issue. That's why you get fired less than 2 years later.
All roads lead to Ron Hextall, guys. All roads lead to Ron Hextall.
All roads. Always coming back to the central point of this offseason, which was, let's continue to throw fuel on the fire at Ron Hextall's wake, because he's probably not getting another job in the NHL.
Not anytime soon, at least. And probably not as GM again.
No, nobody's going to be like, yeah, here's the keys to the car. Certainly the last two that you put into a ditch and totaled entirely. You won't do that to our car, will you? Yeah, the answer is yes. He will total your car. 100%. Do not give him the keys. Honestly.
Yeah.
So buzz driving is drunk driving. Horwat, did you not know this? But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. I watch too much television and watch too many commercials. We will be back next week with more off-season content and potentially some news to talk about. Who knows? Now that there's a sitting president of hockey operations, contract news can drop at any moment. So keep yourself on your toes and keep yourself bookmarked and subscribed to Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, to Inside the Penguins on YouTube, and make sure you bookmark InsideThePenguins.com for all the up-to-date information on the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.